Hello and welcome to the Ross and Cromarty Citizens Advice Bureau podcast. Today we have a very special podcast episode about volunteering with the Bureau, as this episode is being released for National Volunteering Week. I myself started at the Bureau as a volunteer, and I'm joined today by two of our wonderful volunteers, John, who volunteers in Bureau, and Claire, who volunteers in Bureau and also remotely from her home in Wester Ross. Hello to you both, and thank you so much for joining me. The Citizens Advice Scotland Network is a volunteer-led service. Citizens Advice Bureau are local independent charities that provide free and confidential advice on a range of issues, from benefits to housing, debt and more. There are 59 CAB offices throughout Scotland, and you can find your local CAB by visiting the Citizens Advice Scotland website and using the Find Your Local CAB tool. Volunteers are the lifeblood of our Bureau network. More than 3/4 of our Bureau staff, almost 2,000 people, give up their time for free. Our volunteer advisors all undergo a comprehensive training programme and are provided with ongoing support and guidance. And there's a lot to do besides advising people, like fundraising, administrative support, or getting involved with our campaigns. So today I wanted to have a chat with you both about what it's like to volunteer for your local CAB. John, could you start me off by telling me how long you've been a volunteer with CAB and what made you want to start volunteering?
I've been doing this for nearly 15 years. I was at a pre-retirement course, and one of the speakers stressed that it was important to keep yourself active once you retired. You shouldn't go from a busy, responsible job to just doing leisure activities. I looked around and decided that CAB was the answer. It would keep me using my brain and allow me to help people in the community I've lived in for a long time.
That's brilliant. And Claire, same question for you.
I've only been with CAB for a year, but it's been on my radar for years as something I'd like to be involved with. The combination of a relocation to Wester Ross and the fallout of COVID made me feel it was time for me to contact CAB and see if there was anything I could do to make a difference to people in living my own area. Having been a stay-at-home mum for years, though, I was unsure what skills I actually might have to offer. Fortunately, CAB is wonderfully flexible and there's plenty of scope for volunteers to do a whole range of things.
Thank you, Claire. I would absolutely agree with that. There is such a huge range of things that are involved. I myself, as I mentioned, started as a volunteer in 2020 before I applied to become a full-time member of staff in 2021. When I started, I was really looking to expand my CV and gain some real-world experience of giving advice. I was working through my law degree, so I felt fairly confident at things like researching, but I wanted to get some experience of dealing with people and giving them advice. And I thought CAB would be a great way to gain those skills, but also to help people in my local community. As I previously mentioned, our volunteers undertake a 6-week online training programme that is delivered in partnership with West Lothian Citizens Advice Bureau. It involves 2 to 3 online training sessions per week, shadowing experience and supported interviewing. Claire, I know that you undertook the training programme. How did you find it?
I did take it and I really enjoyed it. It was pretty full on though, Emily. It took up most of my spare time during those 6 weeks, so it's worth knowing that. There's a group of about 15 of us from Bureaux all over Scotland. The course was guided tutorials and classes via Zoom and self-study. There's such a wide range of things that Citizens Advice does for its clients, and as advisors we have to have a pretty good handle on everything before we start. There's modules on the benefits system, on housing, on employment and the legal system, for example. You learn about universal credit or disability payments, how they work, who can apply for them and how to apply, but there's no requirement for you to actually learn the amounts paid because this sort of stuff changes all the time. Throughout the training, you are reminded that there's no need to have everything at your fingertips. It's just too much, and it's really reassuring to be reminded of that, because it's just so much. There's a fantastic online database, and there's lots of other resources which we use all the time as advisors, and we're taught to use these during the training as well.
Thanks, Claire, and I agree. I think that's a really, really great point. You are not expected to, and you certainly can't have all of the information in your head at once. As you mentioned, we deal with such a huge range of issues, and really the most important thing is learning how to research properly and be able to use the wonderful database and the information that's available to you to find out information and to then be able to give advice. You certainly don't have to remember everything all at once. Okay, so a further question for you both. What are some of the skills that you have gained from volunteering with CAB, or things that you've learned?
Most of my working life, I was a teacher and in a secure, well-paid job. I knew very little about the welfare state or the support provided by various charitable organisations. Working at the CAB has opened my eyes to the support that is available to people in need, but also how challenging it can be for people who are struggling to access that help. I've also had to work hard at, can I call it, reading between the lines? I find that people often understate their health issues, or they don't want to admit how serious their problems are and come away with phrases like, "Oh, I can manage." And it can be a real challenge to find out how much difficulty the client actually has.
And Claire, same question for you.
Yeah, I thought I was a fairly good listener before I started with CAB, but I've become a much better, more active listener. It's so important to be focused on verbal and non-verbal cues when meeting a client in person, and sometimes it can result in discovering information, like John was saying, about a client's health or circumstances which clients feel it's hard to introduce, but which can materially help us to advise and advocate for them better. I've also learnt how to fill in government forms, and I'd even go so far as to say I enjoy it, which I know mystifies everybody. I've also developed my ability to think laterally, and I've really enjoyed stretching myself and scouring the CAB's resources in the interests of clients.
Thanks, Claire, and John as well. I think I would agree that all of these skills are things that I've gained too. I think particularly active listening is a big one, and as you mentioned, John, it can be really difficult to learn how to read between the lines, because clients often don't tell you exactly what they need or exactly how difficult their situation is, and you need to be able to pick up on things they're maybe not saying, or probe further, ask further questions. So it's really important. That's a skill I think that I've gained from CAB that I will definitely be taking forward with me into life. So again, another question, I guess, for both of you. On the flip side, what are some of the things that you found challenging with volunteering with CAB? John, if I could come to you first.
Well, one of the biggest challenges is accepting that you cannot fix everyone's problems immediately. Sometimes we can, but often there's not a magic solution which instantly solves everything. Some of the people we're trying to help can have quite complex needs, so getting their problems fixed can take time and effort. The bureaucracy of the state can be very frustrating and sometimes hinders progress. Sometimes our clients are in a desperate state and it can be difficult to switch off afterwards. But if you want to help people in difficulty, that's sometimes going to happen.
Thanks, John. I completely agree. And leading off from that, I think something that I found particularly difficult when I first started was when a client asked me a question that I didn't know the answer to. I think sometimes you feel like you need to be able to answer questions straight away. But actually, if you tell a client, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that, please allow me to go and do some research and I will get back to you when I know the answer. Clients are usually quite happy with that, and they're happier knowing that you've done the research and you know what you're telling them rather than taking a guess or trying to answer it straight away without the knowledge. Claire, what do you think?
Like John's, my knowledge of the welfare state and of charitable organisations prior to joining CAB was minimal, and the variety of issues that we can be asked to help with on a daily basis is huge. But the training is so good, and the online resources, as we were saying, is fantastic. I've never really felt out my depth, and I found actually colleagues are an amazing source of knowledge and support as well. Occasionally, there's a client who you can't help. And John and Emily, you were both talking about this, and this can be frustrating and upsetting at times. This may be for a number of reasons, or because their particular problem doesn't fit neatly into one of the categories which government financial assistance covers. But we can report individual cases to Citizens Advice Scotland to look into more closely if we think that the client's situation highlights a social policy issue which may affect more people. In this way, it's possible to help bring about structural changes in some rare cases, even if we can't help a particular client on the day. And this is great, and this is a really lovely part of being involved with an organisation like CAB. It can be quite hard also to hear or see some clients' problems, and every now and again there is a client whose case touches me quite deeply. But I just have to remember the limitations of my role as a CAB advisor, and this is just part of what we do. But there's always someone wiser and more experienced than me to talk to if I need to, and that's fantastic as well.
Thanks, Claire. I think I would absolutely agree with that. There are sometimes people that you can't help, and there are people that you can help, but when they first come to you, it can be quite difficult to see the situation that they're in. But yes, you're right. You have to understand what your limitations are as an advisor, but do what you can to help them and understand that overall you're doing something really, really good. On that topic, again to you both, could you please maybe give me some examples of some of your successes or successful cases that you've dealt with while volunteering? John?
Well, an awful lot of what I do is dealing with the Department of Work and Pensions. And very often we're coming in after our clients have tried to deal with the DWP themselves. But because of the complexity of the forms, they've failed in their application. And it can be quite satisfying because of the training that CAB has given us and our experience of these forms to be able to help the clients get the support that they were actually entitled to receive from the state.
Yes, I would absolutely agree, John. I think that's something that I found as well, being able to help somebody to almost articulate themselves, and we're all aware these forms are incredibly complex. So it's a really good feeling when you're able to help somebody get something that they were entitled to all along.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, what I was going to say is very like John, except for I come in at John is more experienced than me, so he's dealing with failed applications, whereas I go in at the first level, and I've been involved with quite a lot of applications for the Department for Work and Pensions benefit claims forms. It can be really stressful for clients, and it's important to establish their trust and confidence in order to be able to help them to share information with you, because it's highly personal stuff, and it can be really embarrassing for them as well. the forms can take us more than 2 hours to fill in. And, this is something that we do a lot. And there's no guarantee even that the application will be successful at the end. It is a fantastic feeling to discover weeks later when an application has been successful. And one of my most satisfying benefit form cases was a vulnerable elderly client quite recently. The client hadn't even wanted to ask for the form because they had an instinctive mistrust of government and government agencies. And it took multiple phone calls over a few weeks to get to the end of the form. Often the client was really distracted or confused, and they digressed into personal things, and they got really upset. And it was unusual, but I was supported and advised by a colleague just to persist. And it was amazing when we discovered that they'd actually been successful. It makes such a huge difference. Our clients' relationships with Citizens Advice frequently extend over the course of years as well. And this is another really lovely thing, because when clients will need assistance from specialist colleagues, sometimes generalists like me, and then sometimes housing, all sorts, money advice. And so when you get a good result for someone and they're known to colleagues in the Bureau, it's just a lovely feeling, but sharing that with colleagues. Do you want more, Emily? I've got another one.
Yes, absolutely.
There's another case of a young guy who was having difficulties with his electricity provider. So we called up his supplier together. He just didn't have the confidence politely and forcefully to insist on being put through to the right person on his own. So I just did that part for him. And actually, it was really easy to have just taken over the case entirely, but it's a vital part of what we do, is to enable clients to act for themselves if they want to. And he was so grateful, and he was so relieved just to have made a start, on his own, dealing with that company. So that was a sort of lovely moment as well.
I think I'd absolutely have to agree with you there, Claire. I think one of our core values and something that we really strive for at CAB is to empower clients to be able to take their own case forward and to have the knowledge and skills that they need to be able to do that effectively. So it's really good to hear that you've had the experience of doing that with the client. Well, that's us for today, really. I'd like to thank you both for joining me here today. It's been great to hear about your experience as a volunteer with CAB. You've both had such wonderful information to share on the topic, so I'm really glad that you joined me today. If any of our listeners are interested in volunteering, you can find out more information on the Citizens Advice Scotland website. This is www.cas.org.uk/about-us/volunteer-citizens-advice-bureau. For information about Ross and Cromarty CAB, you can email bureau@allnesscab.casonline.org.uk for more information and an application form. As I mentioned earlier, there are 59 Bureaux all over Scotland, so if you're not local to us but interested in volunteering, please use the website to find your local CAB and get in touch with them. That's us for today. Again, John and Claire, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your experience. And goodbye.